future plans for Zero in the franchise?
Thank you, Wim. I heard from higher ups um, in the franchise that there is still a very big possibility for Zero. So, you know,
Yes.
thank you.
Hey folks, welcome to the show. Now, don't worry, Mark is going to be right back. Just a few quick things you have to listen to before you see the rest of the interview. So, first, um, this interview, if you want to watch Mark, if you're listening to this right now on my podcast, I very much would recommend watching the full interview on my new YouTube channel. The link is in the show notes. And if you go to wimsblog.com/7878, you will find everything there to watch it. We did a Zoom session. I recorded it, and then you can watch Mark. It's so much more fun than listening. So I would advise that. And while you're there, obviously, subscribe to my new channel. All the old episodes and interviews are there as well, and all new episodes will be there in the future. Second point, we interviewed, we did the interview in December of 2021. So all the timelines that are mentioned, you have to take that into account. So some of the new movies that Mark has coming out that he mentions, it's actually, he's talking about this year, 2022. So that is important to know. As a final note, the reason it took so long to get this interview out is because, for whatever reason, it never happens, and it's the first time it happened. After so many interviews, all of a sudden my microphone did not record anything. So I had to do voiceovers and editing. So that is why sometimes there's not the perfectly natural flow of a normal conversation. You will see if you watch the video on YouTube, again, I recommend that, you will see that the image jumps sometimes. That's where I had to do some editing to make it work. I did a lot of voiceover. Now, luckily, I had all my notes still from interview, and I recreated as much as I could the whole interview and my questions and comments and so on. So that's not Mark's fault, obviously. That's my fault. I think I have the technical issue fixed now, but that shouldn't stop you from enjoying all the wonderful things that Mark has to say, all the insights he shared. And once again, I want to thank him for taking so much time out of his hectic schedule. All right, that's it. Enjoy the interview. Hey, folks, welcome to the podcast. And I'm very, very happy to finally get a chance to talk to Mark Dacascos. I've
Ready?
been following Mark for a long time throughout his career. So you're gonna have to forgive me if I'll be fanboying throughout this entire episode. Um, Actor, martial artist, many, many things. So this is awesome. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, Wim. Thank you for the invitation. Happy to be.
I remember back in the day suddenly seeing that you were following me on Twitter, and I was like, holy crap, what the hell is going on? Mark's following me.
Oh, Wim, I appreciate it, man. Of course, I looked you up, and you have an extensive resume and tons of credentials in very many different types of martial arts. And the way I knew about you before you even invited me to your show was through our mutual friend and incredible author, Barry Eisler. So if Barry Eisler references you as one of the good guys, I mean, you have my two hands.
Thank you. And Barry's obviously a good friend of mine. We've known each other for many years. He writes really great books, excellent thrillers, and great action scenes. So I obviously recommend everybody to read Barry's books. So let's get started with the questions, Mark. The main thing that I wanted to ask you about first is that you grew up with a very very famous martial artist, both in your father and mother. So you got both parents who are really exceptional martial artists, very well known. What was it like to grow up like that in such a household? And I mainly ask because my son has started training with me a while ago, and obviously
Thank you.
I don't have the perspective as a father what it's like
Yes.
to grow up with somebody who is so very much invested into martial arts. So I basically wanted to get a take from your end, having experienced that at an extremely high level. I mean, your father's very famous, so is your mother. So what was it like in your childhood, starting with training, and how did you grow up,
Mm.
basically?
You know, the thing is, I knew no other. Um, I was with my grandparents. I lived with my grandparents, my maternal grandparents in Hawaii. I was born in Hawaii, and I lived there until I was 6. So the biggest transition and the only reference I have to a different way of life is prior to moving with my father and mother Malia. You know, back in Hawaii, like most of the kids, I woke up, I walked to school, which was near the Alawai Elementary. Grandma walked me there. We walked home. You know, we did all the regular things, played around the house with the neighborhood kids and all that. However, when I moved to Colorado, which you know, you had told me before the podcast that that's where you and your buddies and Barry get together. Um, uh, you know, when I once I moved to Colorado with my father and stepmother who raised me, Leah Bernal, and my brother Craig, um, it was all martial arts because they are still both martial arts teachers. At that time, when I moved with them, it was 1970, and they were in the middle of their competitive years. So every weekend, um, they were either hosting a tournament or attending a tournament or driving to a tournament. And so the likes of Mr. Bill Wallace, Mr. Benny Akitas, Joe Lewis, um, Cecil Peoples, Howard Jackson. These were all my parents' friends. And so I was just around these incredible fighters and martial artists. I mean, guys that did forms and then smacked it out, you know, taping their knuckles up in the ring. And that's what my life was. And whether my brother liked it or not, um, we were going to get involved because mom and dad said we were. So you know, that's how it was. You know, for me, Wim, other than the first 6 years with the grandparents in Hawaii, my brother and I, we know no other. That's what it was. People trained really hard and they fought on the weekends and they did forms and were very disciplined and just you know, physically tough people. But I have to say that, you know, the the hard physical exterior, uh, mom and dad are very kind and very loving. The funny thing is that um, our father Al is much more physically affectionate than my mom Malia. You know, she's very kind and loving, but even her hugs are, you know, very stiff and hard. Whereas dad is all Hawaiian style. Mom is very like, oh, let's hug. That's a hug. Okay. And then, you know, with a stiff back. So it was interesting for sure. Now that I talk with people that don't have martial arts, you know, parents, and you know, competitive fighters and former champions as parents, I understand that it was quite unique. Yeah.
Now, given what you've just explained, it's not easy as a child growing up like that with all that discipline and all that training. And I've seen it many times before when martial artists force their children too harshly
Right.
into the training, that it ends up backfiring. That the kids resent their parents, or it's difficult for them to keep having a normal relationship with their parents because of all the very strict training that they have to do.
Right. Right.
So my question is that, were there ever points in time where you were like, okay, I want to quit, I don't want to do this, or do you even consider maybe sometimes that what would your life have been like had they not been martial artists?
Wim, 100%. I felt it. I felt it back then, and I still wonder if I would have if I would have gotten into martial arts myself if mom and dad hadn't told me to, or made us. Um, so the answer is yes. All the time, I wanted to ride my bike. My brother and I wanted to ride our bikes on the weekends. We wanted to go play, touch football, hide and seek. We lived in Green Mountain, Colorado. So it's a suburb outside of Denver, and it's beautiful over there with the hills and trees and just open space. We did not want to spend our weekends in sweaty smelling, high school auditoriums. It was just, we thought it was gross. We wanted to be outside. We didn't want to go fight people that we had no beef with. It didn't make any sense, we're going to go to a tournament and you guys are going to fight a bunch of kids if you win your matches. And my thought was, why? Why do I want to go do that? You know, um, and it was it was double pressure because not just our father fighting, but our mom was ranked one of the top female fighters for 5 or 6 years straight. Um, Malia mom was the first woman on the cover of Black Belt magazine. So, she may have been into it more than even my father. She loved fighting and she was really good and she could do forms and weapons. And of course, she was, my father's first female black belt. But Wim, this is back in the day before safety equipment was created, right? So, mom and dad and all the fighters they knew used to tape up their knuckles, right? Because if they hit somebody in the mouth, they didn't want to cut their knuckles up. That was the reasoning behind that, right? And then back then, growing kicks were allowed, so we wore cups, and they didn't even have shin protectors, which for Muay Thai fighters as yourself, not a problem. But what they did was they took styrofoam, thin sheets of styrofoam, and then shaped it to the shape of their shins, and then used nylon and some just sport adhesive to tape it around our shins so that we could still fight the whole day. Because if you made it to the finals, it was usually average between 4 and 6 fights in one day, so so the pressure to do what mom and dad did was strong because we had both parents and all their friends were in that. um so yes, there were all but maybe 2 or 3 years where I really didn't want to compete in martial arts tournaments. Once, after the first few years when we got used to the training and doing it, I I loved the training so much. I ended up loving the training and I still love the training. But in terms of going to compete, I was, like I said, with the exception of maybe a couple of years, I wasn't really into it. Didn't need to do it, but when you have mom and dad behind you saying you're doing it, you do it. So,
Now, this is something that I've explained before in podcasts to the audience is that back in those days, I mean, it was not like mixed martial arts today, but it was very, very rough. A lot of contact, even when it wasn't supposed to be, and it was pretty harsh as far as competition goes. There was even stuff like groin kicks that were sometimes allowed. So, could you talk a little bit about that? What was the competitive scene like back in those days?
oh yeah, growing kicks were allowed. Yeah, I think the biggest difference was so we entered in the open karate martial arts tournaments. So it was all different types of striking. No grappling. Once you got to the ground, unless it was a drop kick where you slide under the ground and throw a kick to the groin from the floor. After a couple of seconds, they would stop the fight. But in terms of body contact, they're always saying it's semi-contact, but very, very seldom did I see anybody pull their punches for the body. That was pretty much full. And then to the face, it was supposed to be no contact or semi, but accidents happened all the time. And without protective gear, you felt it. You know, um, the great thing about that though, about the old school martial arts tournaments was, it was really, technique based and a lot of speed. These guys, I mean, I saw Mr. Ben Yakita's fight with my own eyes. I saw, you know, Joe Lewis. I saw Bill Wallace, who was incredibly fast. My father had the honor of fighting these guys, so I saw it, and they were so fast. I mean, it was just wham, move, 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 bam, 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 and they're out. And if somebody didn't score, it would just keep going. It was incredible. So I feel so privileged to have seen that, and then to see my mom get in the ring. I mean, how often do you get to see your mother get in a ring and she's happy about it, and she's out there slugging it out with no gloves? I mean, back then the fighters used to grab each other's arm and try to lift it up and just throw these reverse punches into the ribs. And to see your mom do that and then throw round kicks and side kicks and front kicks, and I'm like, this is my mom. You know what I mean? I suppose even back then, even not knowing much difference, um, it was very odd for me. But this is the great thing about that, Wim. When your mom is tougher than her sons, um, she doesn't have to say things twice for us to wash the dishes. You know what I mean? And when mom, when we moved to Germany, I'm jumping around here in terms of our life, but because we moved to Europe when my brother and I were um, 11 or 12. But when we were living in Europe and mom and dad had me competing, she used to wake me up at 5 o'clock, a little after five, 5 days a week, to run the forest with her, rain, snow, hot, didn't matter, before I went to school. And I have to tell you, Wim, I'm not sure about now, but probably still now, she was always faster than me. We ran a few miles and I couldn't keep up with her. And I say that with pride and with a little humiliation.
Taking a quick turn here. So you do a lot of acrobatics in your movies consistently, and could you explain how you learned that? It's very clear that you're a trained gymnast.
Okay, so I'm going to jump around again. From Germany, I ended up going to Taiwan. And if you want to come back to that story, we can talk about that. I went to Taiwan, went back to Germany, went back to Hawaii. And, um, I'd always been interested in what people could do with their bodies. And I actually, I'm going to go back to Germany. Anyway, I'm in Germany. I found this book on gymnastics, and it was from these incredible gymnasts. I think from, I don't know if it was Taiwan or Hong Kong or China back then, but it was all in Chinese. But it had pictures of how to do these certain moves, back handspring, aerial cartwheel, and all that. And there weren't a lot of friends of mine that knew how to do this stuff, so I just consulted my book. And I would look at the book, and I ended up teaching myself how to do an aerial cartwheel. Um, some of my friends and myself, my mom taught us how to do the standard butterfly, but I wanted to learn more. So between the book and one of my friends who had a cousin who was a circus performer, he came into town, and I had a couple hours with him, and he taught me how to do a back handspring. And so off of those things, I kind of built the basics, and then just you know continued on with that. In Hawaii, when I was in Hawaii, I learned how to do these whip overs, which are back handsprings without touching your hands. So you whip yourself really fast, and then do the backflip and all that. So I just worked on that, and I always loved gymnastics, and every now and then it would show some on German television, the competitions, and yeah, I was just fascinated how these people could just go up in the air and go into a backflip and then do a twist and all these things. So when I found my way back to America, and I had just turned 19 years old. I'm in Los Angeles, and there's a lot of you know turns and twists how I got to Los Angeles. But I'm in Los Angeles, and I was at Los Angeles Valley College, and I talked to Coach Gary Honjo, and I said, Coach Honjo, uh, I love gymnastics. I have had zero formal training, but I've been a martial artist for, you know, a large part of my life. Um, I know some basics based off of my friends teaching me and this book. And if you'd allow me to try out for you, uh, I'd be very appreciative. Not thinking that I'd have any real chance, but at least I got to, train with this real gymnastics coach. And Valley College at that time didn't have springboard floors. They had big wrestling mats for their gymnastics area. So I did all the tricks that I could, and then he came up to me and he said, "Okay, we don't have enough time to teach you, you know, all of the events, but there's a possibility that you could, do something on floor. So we'll make you a floor specialist, and if you want to join the team, just focusing on floor, and we'll teach you other things, for fun, extracurricular. We can do that." And I said, "Thank you so much. Yes, please." So for 1 year, I got to be on the Los Angeles Valley College gymnastics team. I competed on floor. Coach Hanjo taught me everything he could. I mean, he and our wonderful teammates, and they got me to do double backflips in about 3 months, which was crazy. Thank you. I was probably the only guy that key-eyed when he went into the air for a double back. I was so scared because I didn't have any formal training. So, they're teaching me on a wrestling mat. So the first double back I ever threw was on a wrestling mat, and I key-eyed, and it worked. And still to this day, one of my very close friends, Vince Montez, he was extraordinary on rings. He was a ring specialist, and he had competed a couple years before me. I'll tell you this real quick, and then we'll go on to other questions. But I think it's kind of funny. Um, in addition to taking my academic classes at Valley College, I also thought that dance is fantastic training just for the physical body, rhythm and movement, and so I was taking jazz class and ballet, and not growing up in America, I didn't see any problem with myself walking with. I should have known better. I was not maybe all that wise, but I'd walk with my tights and leg warmers. I saw the football guys practicing on one side of the field, so I didn't think it was a problem walking across one part of the field in my tights and leg warmers to gymnastics class, because it's just another art. But I think I possibly offended some of the football players, and I stopped doing that. So I started going around the football field. But then I walk into gymnastics class, and I didn't take my leg warmers off and change into my gymnastics uniform. I thought, okay, nobody's in here one day, right? I'm gonna go and try the rings. So I jump up on the rings, and I'm in my tights and my leg warmers, and I'm like swinging around, warming up, going, "Oh wow, this is really cool. What do you do?" And then I hear this voice booming from one side of the gym: "Get off the rings! That's a man's event!" I drop the rings, and I look over there, and there's this guy with this, little waist and huge lats and shoulders, all like that. And that's my good friend, my now good friend, Vince Montez. And he's looking at me going, I was like, so I never went on the rings with leg warmers again. And eventually, Vince Montez, we became very close, and he did teach me how to do the Iron Cross. So there was about 11 years of my life that I could actually hold the Iron Cross, and that is all because of Vince Montez. So all of you former ringmen out there, I apologize that I got on there with tights and leg warmers. I didn't know any better. I am sorry.
Gymnastics is great. Both my children, I made them go do gymnastics, and they enjoyed it, obviously. But they both did gymnastics when they were young. Just have this foundation that helps later in life with coordination and everything else you do. And it was clear when I saw one of your first movies of yours that I saw was Crying Freeman, and you did a lot of gymnastics in there, acrobatics and flips and butterflies and so on. And it was very clear that that you had done the work to be really good at that, as opposed to just an actor pretending to be able to do that for a role. So that's why I wanted to ask the previous question.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I want to give a shout out to my teammates Javier Curiel and Greg Carpenter because they, in addition to the whole team and Vince, of course, and Coach Hanjo, they really worked on my technique so much that even now when I practice a backflip or whatever, I always throw my hands up. Nobody's judging me anymore, and I'm still doing that. But yeah, the great thing about gymnastics, like you said, is that it really helps with your body mechanics and in anything else you do and body awareness. And we had our kids all enroll also in the basics when they were young. Our first guy was really talented at it for a while, and then our second child, Capono, he even competed in gymnastics, and now he's a soccer player. But I think as you feel, I think it really helped him. I think it really helps him in his soccer, just body awareness and the agility, the foundation.
Let's take a hard turn here, and I'm gonna go in a different direction. How did you get started with acting? I know there's a story there, but could you talk about how you got your start in acting? What drove you there? Was it something you always wanted to do, or by accident, or what happened?
Okay, I will try to make this as concise as possible. But so from Hawaii to Germany to Taiwan, back to Germany, Hawaii, and now I'm in San Francisco, and I am teaching for my mom at her martial arts and aerobics school in San Francisco, Chinatown, or near Chinatown. I'm on break from classes. I'm in life. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do because originally, when I went to Taiwan, I wanted to be a monk, and for many different reasons, that's another story. It didn't work out. So now I'm in San Francisco. Um, you know, uh, Thinking about going to college and what I would study and so forth. Um, Day wise, I'm on my lunch break. I'm going to lunch, and I'm walking to lunch, and these two guys stopped me on the sidewalk and asked me if I wanted to audition for a movie. And I said, no, thank you. And they said, why not? And I said, because I'm not an actor. And they said, oh, all right, well, you don't want to try it anyway? And I said, no, thank you. And they asked me again, well, why? And I said, because I'm not an actor. And to me, um, acting, martial arts, whatever skill or vocation, everything takes a lot of training. That's just, I know how hard it is to be a martial artist. I know how hard it is to be good at gymnastics. And so my mind just thinks that everything is that hard. Uh, and so I wasn't prepared to be an actor. I hadn't even thought about it. Anyway, they said, "Listen, we'd like to give you our number. If you change your mind, please call and come in and read for us." And I said, "Well, thank you so much." So they gave me the number. I went on my day. Later that afternoon, I told my mom that these two guys asked me to audition, and she said, "Well, you should do it." And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "Marco, you know, what you had in mind for your life, that didn't work out. The other thing didn't work out. Um, Life is a big roller coaster of ups and downs and twists and turns. You should audition." And I took that to heart, and I made the phone call to to the movie people and set up an appointment for the audition. And I went in, and they had me do all kinds of things that were all firsts for me, improvisation and read some lines. And I'm sure I was horrible. But 3 days later, I got a call that said I had the role. And I thought, okay, well, thank you. What does that mean? Everything was first. I'd never taken a drama class. I never studied Shakespeare, nothing. I'd never seen a camera, never thought about doing that. and they explained to me this, and then I guess a week later or so, I'm on the set of a movie, and I have um, the fantastic director Wayne Wang, who went on to direct Joy Luck Club. This is way before that, of course. Um, he's directing me, and I'm opposite one of the most beautiful, talented uh, people I've ever met, Joan Chen. So with Joan Chen, I did my first acting scene ever, directed by Wayne Wang, and that is how I started.
I always find it fascinating to see that random encounters like this can lead to, for instance, in your case, a wonderful career in movies.
Yes, yes, and I will be forever grateful to Chris Lee. That's one of the guys who stopped me on the street. He later went on to become this huge president of a studio and executive producer of many movies. And then my mom again telling me you should do it. So thank you, mom.
I'm going to take another turn here and talk about Only the Strong, a movie in which you showed capoeira, which was back in those days not as well known as it is now. I'm assuming that your background in martial arts obviously helped you for that, especially with all the training you've had from your parents. But was it different? Was it the same? How did the gymnastics play a part in everything? So what was it like, and how did you approach the capoeira?
Yes. So so the great thing, the one of the fascinating things about capoeira is, as far as I understand, and just to qualify all of this, I am when we were doing that movie, my teacher, Mestre Amen Santo, uh, I had just received my yellow cord, which is probably equivalent to a yellow belt. So I was very much still a beginner back then. And all these years later, because I have not been consistent with my training at all, I am still a yellow cord. So I am not a real capoeira teacher. I am still a real capoeira student and beginning to intermediate, I would say. Intermediate, and that would be being boastful. Um, I'm still very much a beginner at capoeira. But yes, those movements, as far as I understand in capoeira, there's no set stance. Everything is transitional movement, and so that movement like this, that is all to not be a fixed target, and sparring like that, you never want to be, well, at least I think we all agree that a moving target is harder to hit. And so in capoeira, it's the same thing. Everything is always moving, whether you're upside down or whatever. It's just moving, and so that is, as I was taught, uh, part of capoeira. And so the kicks prior to doing the kick or movement, it's all a movement, which is also difficult because not only is a moving target harder to hit, but if the person throwing the strike is also moving at the same time, that's also harder to hit your target. So there's that advantage and disadvantage. It's like with a gun, it's much easier to aim the gun if you're still, but if you're doing this and shooting, it makes it more difficult. That's capoeira. Advantages and disadvantages, but extremely challenging to do. And I'm still a fan of a capoeira when myself.
For the listeners who don't know capoeira really well, it's a very dynamic martial arts, very acrobatic. So I'm assuming, Mark, that your background in gymnastics helped you out a lot in preparation for the role, and you made it look really good in the movie. That was always my impression. So did it help?
Thank you. Uh, that certainly, the gymnastics training 100% helped because uh, I had oh less than a year before of capoeira, formal capoeira training before we shot the movie. I joined Mestre Amen Santos capoeira school in November, and then this is before I even knew about the audition. I just trained because my good friend, um, Earl White, and previous to that, one of my father's students, Sifu Bill Owens, had told me about capoeira. And then Earl White, he was like, for years he was saying, you got to go work out with my friend, and he's a capoeira master, he's amazing. And I always wanted to, but life and things get in the way, and I didn't do it. And then at one point, I just felt like I needed a change. I loved martial arts. I wanted to keep doing martial arts, but I wanted to do something completely different. And that's when it all came together. Of course, I want to do a different martial art. Capoeira would be pretty different. So, so in November, on my own, not knowing about any audition or movie, just for personal reasons, I went to Mestre Amen Santo, and that was in November. And then, just serendipitous, the audition for Only the Strong comes up in January. So I'd only had 3 months, 3 months plus of capoeira training. I auditioned, for Sheldon Lettich, wonderful director. I was offered the job, the lead role, and then from, let's see, that was maybe now February. From February until we started shooting, I think it was in October, I had private lessons and group classes with Mestre Amen Santo. Um, they hired my friend Ev Carrion to bulk me up because I had to gain. Sheldon wanted me to be more bulky, so or bulky. I'm not naturally bulky, so I gained maybe 8 to 10 pounds, and worked on the building the body up, and then double classes with Mestre Amen, and the gymnastics certainly helped because it's a lot of handstands and flipping around. What's different though is that capoeira does the similar acrobatic movements, but oftentimes it's out of a strange movement, or for me, what was a different movement, not straight ahead. You're coming out of a cartwheel and this, and then you're flying into it. So off-angled acrobatics, uh, and then when you land, you go into another movement. You don't just throw your hands up. So I had to, the first couple months, I think I had to get used to not doing a backflip and then putting my hands up like this. Um, and then it was also interesting because, doing the cartwheel and different movements, you're imagine you're doing the cartwheel, but you're keeping your eye on your opponent who is also moving at the same time. So yes, gymnastics helped a lot, but capoeira is hard. And then as I get older and understand more, I have even more appreciation for the capoeiristas, because and of course capoeira has evolved, and the movements they do now, back then was hard, but now they add another half twist or a full twist to everything they already did. It's crazy, crazy.
Now let's move to Crying Freeman. Great movie. I loved the manga. I'm a big fan of it. But when I saw you in the movie, I was very much impressed again by your performance, like the acrobatics, the butterfly kick, which I used to be able to do at one point in time. Um, Very impressive. Enjoyed the movie a lot, and you did an excellent job, in my opinion, portraying the character.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching the movie. I appreciate that. Christophe Gans was our director, French director. He also did a movie that I did later on called Brotherhood of the Wolf. Yes, but so with Crying Freeman, Christophe brought in David Wu, who was John Woo's editor. So they had a certain sensibility. Christophe loves um, Asian movies, loves martial arts, obviously. And when we prepared for that fight scene, we had a very talented stunt crew. We had Scott Attia and Mike Cristaggio up in Vancouver, very well known stunt coordinators. And Christophe wanted them and myself to collaborate and put something together that I felt comfortable with, and then show him, prior to us actually filming it. And I love the butterfly twist. I learned my butterfly twist, uh, indirectly, no, actually directly from Jet Li, from watching him in Shaolin Temple, and I I could be mistaken, but I saw the Beijing Wushu team in San Francisco when they came over and did a performance, and I'm 99% sure. that Jet was on the team, and if he wasn't, it was his former team. In any case, they did butterfly twists, and it just locked in my brain, and I love that move so much. So based off of what I'd seen, I taught myself how to do that, and um, I wanted to see if we could incorporate that into the finale fight scene in Crying Freeman. And Scott and Mike liked the move, and Christoph liked the move. So we figured out ways to incorporate that and keep the aesthetic of the actual manga in our live action. So it was a collaborative effort. Shooting it was difficult because it was in Vancouver. It was late fall, early winter, freezing. Freezing. Yeah, yeah, and I think if you I think somewhere on YouTube there may be some behind the scenes footage, but it was so cold. And as you know, I'm shirtless and I have the tattoos. So for them to and I don't have any more tattoos on my body, so that's all their fantastic artwork. Um, when they're drawing it on me, I'm shirtless, I have to be. And then for the fight scenes, I'm shirtless. So it was really, really difficult, Wim. Fortunately, I was well prepared and I knew it was coming. So, you know, but to get the body to move with the flips and the butterfly twist, in almost snowy weather, uh, I wouldn't want to do it again now. Of course, I would if I had the part, but very challenging. And so much so that when we did our dialogue out there, we had ice cubes. We put ice cubes in our mouth before the scene, so that when we're talking, it wasn't all just steaming up. So shirtless and ice cubes in your mouth. It was hard. It was difficult. And real quick for Crying Freeman, I would be in a huge amount of trouble if I didn't mention that that is where I met my wonderful wife, Julie Condra, the girl Emu. So that's where Julie and I met.
I'd like to switch to a cult classic movie that you made, Drive. But before we say anything about that, just a quick thing that I want to mention is that both in the Crying
Yes.
Freeman movie and in Le Pacte de Loup, so the Brotherhood of the Wolf, just the whole look and feel, the aesthetic, that was really great. And I think you did an excellent job in both movies acting to make your
Oh,
acting
cool.
blend in with the whole feel of the movies.
Well, thank you. And again, going back to Crying Freeman and Le Pacte des Loups, that you said you like the sensibility and the feeling. That's the director Christophe Gans, and with Drive, that's Steve Wang. Steve Wang, a wonderful friend of mine, um, and that's his sensibility, his action packed. He wanted to pay homage to Hong Kong films, and Steve himself has a great sense of humor, and he tried to bring that into the film, and I think he was successful with that. Um, but yes, we had very limited funds, very limited time, and Steve wanted to have it action packed. So he literally had two units: our main unit with the dialogue and the scenes, our first unit, and then second unit, action scenes, running simultaneously. And we were shooting most of the time 6-day weeks. And sometimes we even snuck on Sundays to get some extra shots. So he was running two units at the same time, and I would go back and forth and do as much as I could on my own. But huge credit and thanks and appreciation and honor to Alpha Stunts, Koichi Sakamoto and his stunt team, because I had a great. Did I have a couple guys that helped me that stunt doubled me on some of the things? Well, probably yes. I think there were at least two guys, possibly three, that took some of the major hits for my character Toby Wong. But Koichi Sakamoto and Alpha Stunts, I think they kicked booty on that. I mean, they did some crazy moves. and everybody survived, and nobody went to the hospital except me. One day, one day, um, did you know about this, Wim? No. Okay. One day we were doing the hotel. There's a hotel fight, and it's with shoes and pots and pans and a
Oh, that's
baton.
a great scene.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, one of the moves, um, I, the guy comes at a baton, and we didn't have enough money to pay for a fake baton, so it was a real baton, and it had these spikes on it. And so when I hit it, boom, it flew out of his hand, and I guess I wasn't present enough to move out of the way because it hit me in the head. Pop! It flew, pop, like this, and then blood. And on this side it was split open. So that night I went to the hospital, got it stitched back up. Next day came to set, had a little band-aid over the stitches, and we had dialogue scene that day. So Steve said, no problem, just turn your head and we'll put Kadeem on this side and shoot from this angle. So the whole scene, I have stitches, but you never see it because you just, use the angle and camera techniques to get away with it. Yeah.
For me, one of the things that makes the movie so awesome is just the chemistry between you and Kadeem. It just worked so well as kind of like this buddy movie, really well.
Wim, thank you so much. Kadeem, the great thing is Kadeem is, well, he's a fantastic actor and improviser. So, once Steve got what he needed, he let Kadeem go with different takes and just improvise all the time. So one of the challenges for me was to try to keep a straight face when Kadeem is doing his thing. And then you see Kadeem and Brittany have their scenes together, that chemistry, the sense of humor. Oh man, I thought yeah, they were just fantastic together.
What we obviously all want to know is how much you prepare the karaoke scene.
Right. So to tell you the truth, I didn't do too much because in the script it was just one or two quick lines, and then um, I remember a couple nights before we shot that, Steve said, I think I kind of want to do a little more song and dance there. You know, maybe you can play with some of the song and just work on the lyrics and give me something. So I had I think a day or two just to play with it, and I thought, oh wow, this is actually kind of fun. And the worse singer I am, probably the better it is for the scene, and gives Kadeem stuff to play with. So it was again a collaborative effort. Kadeem didn't know what I was going to do. Steve had certain ideas, and then I came in with my bass idea, and then we just played from there. At the very end, when I do that silly kind of lame double pirouette, that was Steve Wang. He said, "Yeah, you got to do this move." And I'm like, "Oh man!" So he threw that in there, and then a couple of these like that. That was Steve. He says, "Yeah, do this here." And I'm like, "Okay," And then Kadeem just, he just rolled with whatever we threw at him. You know.
Now let's move on to John Wick 3, which you play the main
Right.
villain, and a great movie, obviously, and it's a lot of fun to watch, lots of action. But for me, the best scene for me in the movie is when you are doing the couch scene. Could you talk a little bit about that one?
So, without giving, hopefully, not any spoilers, because just in case some of your fans haven't seen it, our listeners haven't seen it. Before we actually had the cameras rolling, Chad Stahelski, our director, uh, asked Yanu and myself to do a rehearsal and just do whatever we want, improv it, whatever we want, to just give a baseline for him of ideas and see what works and what doesn't work. And so, uh, I already had some ideas that I wanted to play with, and without changing the lines, um, I was just gonna tilt it in a certain direction that could possibly be interesting and fun. and still give the story what it needed, but just a slightly different take. And I didn't tell Chad what I wanted to do, and I didn't tell Keanu either. So on rehearsal, and you know, for you, Wim, you've seen it, and for your listeners and viewers who have seen the scene, you guys will know what I'm talking about, and hopefully I won't spoil it for the people that haven't seen it yet. But we he yelled action on rehearsal, and Keanu makes his move into the room, um, sits himself down. I come in and, you know, where you would normally sit if you're a respectful, mindful person, I took a pause and then didn't do that. And then you know what I did? I kept on moving, and you know that scene evolved. And I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to give it away. But I can tell you that when I'm as I was sitting down next to Mr. Reeves, my thigh and bum brushed up against his shoulder, rubbed against his arm, and we were sitting so close. I could feel him breathe, and it was so funny because on rehearsal, you know, Keanu's a great actor, and he's trying to stay in character, but he's also trying not to laugh. You know, you know. And then since I have the first word in the scene, he can't really say anything until I start. And so I let it rest, and I could feel him go through a moment of like laughter, and then like, WTF? What is this guy doing? And I didn't, and I just let it sit. I thought that was my kind of intention, right? Just to let it sit. And so Keanu, being a professional, without saying anything, he just kind of, you know, makes a move over, and I still don't say anything. And then he's like, he looks at me like, I still don't say anything. Then he gets up and he sets himself over there, and I still don't say anything. And then finally, you know how the scene goes. We worked it anyway. Um, when Chad yelled "cut" on rehearsal, Keanu burst out laughing. It was really fun, and I thought, he burst out laughing. But then, he was like, can we do this? Can we do that? Is it too funny? And blah blah blah. And then Chad comes out with a very straight face, and I thought, okay, this is where I get fired. Unfortunately, it wasn't that. He said, I like it. Let's do it. So it was a collaborative effort of Keanu apparently having an idea of how it should go, and then, you know, not yelling cut, letting the actor and myself play it a different way, and he was open to that. And Chad also, you know, told me afterwards that it wasn't quite how they saw it, but he was kind of open to something different. So I have to really thank Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves for being open to a different take on something, and they actually kept it in the movie. So
Now, you obviously played the hero in many movies, but was it different playing a villain? Did you enjoy it? What was it like to play Zero?
yeah, absolutely, yes, it was. And the interesting thing is, I try, the times that I do play the villain as such in John Wick 3. um, I still look at it as the hero role because from his point of view, he's the hero. He's the good guy. He's doing what's right. It may just be right for that character, as opposed to the hero who does right not just for himself but for everybody else. Um, uh, I loved playing that character. I think Zero has heart. Obviously, has huge respect for Mr. Wick. Um, and there are so many different colors that I saw that he has had. And again, you know um, huge thanks to Chad and Keanu for letting that side of Zero come out, you know.
Well, it is an excellent scene, and I always like those scenes where, protagonist and antagonist don't fight but talk to each other. Any future plans for Zero in the franchise?
Thank you, Em. I heard from higher ups um, in the franchise that there is still a very big possibility for Zero. So yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Something that I wanted to ask you, and I always wondered about, is you have a very versatile capability as an actor. From what I've seen in your movies, you can do Hong Kong style action movies, like lots of props, like Jackie Chan, kickboxing, the more typical Hollywood style of martial arts and fight scenes that we're used to seeing. How do you keep all that apart? It's not easy. People might think it is, but it's very difficult to move in a different way. Let's say you're used to kickboxing, then you have to move like a traditional kung fu guy. You seem to be able to do it all, which I find very impressive. So, could you talk a little bit about how you train? How do you view those action scenes? How do you keep all that apart, or do you?
Thank you. Well, I to me the fight scenes, the choreography, that is physical dialogue. It's physical dialogue, and as an actor, I try to serve the story. So how do I best help convey what the character is feeling and what the story is telling? And you know, as my character speaks differently and is in a different setting, it just makes sense to me that that unless he's similar to other characters I portrayed, he probably fights differently. He speaks differently. He moves differently, and he fights differently. He comes from a different background. So whatever that character's situation is and backstory is, I try to make sure that the physical dialogue matches the verbal dialogue, and that's pretty much it. If he's a special forces guy that lived down in Brazil, and while he was down there made friends with a capoeira teacher and started learning, then that's his way. That's how he moves. You know, if he's one of the sons of a samurai teacher, then he's going to move in a different way. Um, um, if he's a Native American that happens to be flexible, he may have this martial art feel, but it's not as clean as a Hong Kong fighter. So really, I just try to serve the story. As an actor, I try to serve the story, and that's verbally, that's emotionally, and that's physically.
How much influence do you have on the fight choreographies of your movies?
Yeah, it varies. Working with Christoph, he likes me to get in there and build from the ground up. Um, a lot of movies recently, because of time constraints. I mean, like back for Wick, um, Chad and his team um, really let me collaborate with them. A lot of other movies with more of time constraint and budget constraints. A lot of times the fight scenes are already built, but usually the directors encourage me to come in there and say, if something doesn't feel right, feel free to change it. I, on the other hand, um, if they've already done something in terms of the story and character, I try to change as little as possible so that I can serve the choreographer and the story and the character and the director's vision. Unless it feels very awkward, um, unless it feels very awkward, I'll try to just uh, do what they have set because I want to serve the story and the character. I don't want it to serve me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course, makes perfect sense. On the other hand, there's also the fact that you've had such a long career starring in so many, really successful movies, and obviously being an accomplished martial artist yourself. I can imagine that sometimes the crew sees you, coming on board on the project, and that they're maybe a little bit intimidated by your experience and all your accolades that you've had so far in your career, which we hope will last for much longer, obviously. But does that work out?
Well,
How does that go?
yes, yes, yes. Yeah, no, no, it's true because I'm 57 years old, so I'm usually a lot older than the guys they have coming in. On the other hand, I also respect the guys that are, choreographing the fights because they're super talented. They've trained hard. This is their specialty. They've obviously talked with the director about what my character or the other characters would do and move. So I try to really fit in there, and stay because it would be very easy for me to go, okay, this is what my body's used to. Um, I'll do this. But then, Wim, you'd see me doing the same moves all the time, and I don't want to do that. That's like saying having the same dialogue the whole time. I wanna, like I said, I want to do my best to serve the story and the character, which then requires moves that maybe sometimes oftentimes I'm not used to because I'm not that character. So I want to, portray that character. So, it is really in the best scenario, a very positive collaborative effort. Director, choreographers, actors, stunt people, which is what makes movie making so wonderful and TV making because you get to work with so many wonderful, talented, passionate people that have one same goal. All these different types working together for one goal.
Now, a totally different question from your experience. What would be some of the common misconceptions that are out there when it comes to martial arts movies, fight scenes, fight choreography, and so on? Just anything that comes to mind.
Okay. Well, I think of, of the fight scenes. I've seen some fantastic real life fighters, competitive fighters, um, do some screen work. And although it looks good, it doesn't look half as good as when they fight for real. And then, which is crazy because you think, oh, it's going to be so easy because they're fantastic in real life fighting, at least on competitive fighting. And then they go to film, and it still looks really good because they're athletic, but not as crisp and sharp and relaxed as when they're really fighting in competition. And then I've seen um, some people that are great athletes that can make the fight scenes look fantastic, but they're very leery of sparring or actually fighting. So I guess my point there is that you can be a great competitive fighter or real life fighter, and you can be a great movie fighter, but unless you train both, it's hard to be both. Um, they're separate arts that can work together, but one doesn't mean that you're great at the other. You have to just, you have potential at both, but you have to actually work on both. Um, and then what also comes to mind is that wardrobe costumes make a huge difference in fight scenes. I remember shooting Brotherhood of the Wolf, and um, we had the choreography down, but that was without actually rehearsing with rain machines and a, a grade of a mountain like this in mud, and then a 20-pound leather trench coat, when soaked with water was really hard to move in, and then boots that I was sloshing around in, and a wetsuit under the trench coat and my clothes, so oftentimes fight scenes are always difficult to shoot, but they can be even more difficult once you get your actual costume on and then working with the elements. So I really applaud everyone that is involved in movie making because everybody is working together in a good, in an ideal, when it's ideal, and collaborating, and you're giving your best so that you can give your audience your best. One of my acting teachers said that we as performers, we need to give our heart and soul to our craft because we are asking people to give 2 hours, 2 hours plus of their very limited time in life and their hard earned money to focus and watch our story, our movie, our TV show. And I have never forgotten that. So um, I and I would argue most of my fellow actors, we really do our best to give you our best. And, we appreciate the fans and people that watch our shows because we know that time is limited and funds are limited. So thank you.
Now, this is maybe difficult to answer or impossible. If you can't, it's fine. But any new or upcoming projects you can mention?
Yes, I would love to. I would, okay. There are two shows that I'm very excited about that they have not even made the official announcement, but we've already wrapped it up. So there are two shows, Wim, that are coming out in summer or early fall 2022. And if you would like to talk about that at another time and invite me back, I would be happy to come see you again. So those are the two shows I can't tell you about, but we did just wrap Blade of the 47 Ronin in Budapest. This is a sequel that, to Keanu Reeves' 47 Ronin. It takes place 400 years after his story. And Ron Yuan is our director, wonderful actor and director. He put together a super talented cast and crew. We shot the movie in Budapest, Hungary, and it should be out summertime next year. Also did a movie directed by Tomek Baginski, who is one of the executive producers and directors of the TV show Witcher. We did a movie called Saint Seiya Knights of the Zodiac.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And it stars um, Madison Eisman and McKenyu, Famke Janssen, Sean Bean, Diego Tinko. Um, let me see. Uh, um, and let's see. There's a couple more actors, and I can't remember the names right now because you know how when you have these blanks. Anyway, um, great cast, and we shot that also in Budapest, Hungary, and that should be out the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023.
I'm a huge fan of the anime, so this is awesome. Can you say which character you're playing?
I don't I don't believe they've announced the character yet, but it's really fun.
Well, whoever it is, I'm sure it's going to be awesome.
Okay, thank you, man. Thank you. There's two more projects if you don't mind me mentioning. Run and Gun, directed by Chris Borelli. That comes out, I believe, next month or February. Really fun, eclectic cast.
I saw the trailer and it looked great.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Our lead guy, Ben, um, he rocks it. He's also one of our producers, but he's an excellent actor, and he has he just has a rough day story wise. He has a rough day, and he brings it with a sense of humor and charm and heart. And Christopher Borelli, our writer director, I think he did a phenomenal job. The other one is really fun for me because my sons were both huge Power Ranger fans, and this movie called The Legend of the White Dragon stars one of the Power Rangers, Jason David Frank. Aaron Schenke and his father directed. Wonderful script, fun story, lots of heart and action. So it was it was a really fun work wise 2021 for me, and I got to work with some incredible, talented people. So I feel very blessed.
Now, what's in store for you for the future? What are you going to do next? Chilling out, or what's coming up for you that you can talk about?
Oh goodness! Well, Yes, the next week or so, just chilling, relaxing with the family, going on my daily hikes. Sometimes early in the morning, sometimes late at night with our two dogs, Fred and Ruby. And then there are some really interesting projects circling around. We'll see what happens with them. Sometimes good things and sometimes nothing at all. So yeah, that's life, right?
All right,
So we
excellent. So we've been going for a little bit over an hour, Mark. I tremendously appreciate all the time that you've given us. Are
I'd
are you still good to go, or
Yeah, Wim, if we can wrap this up, that'd be great. But please, if it's good with you, I would love to come back. So if you were interested, maybe after some of these shows, um, are announced or air, then we can come back and talk about that if you'd like.
I would very much appreciate that. That'd be awesome. I
Okay.
hope I didn't fanboy too much today with this episode.
You did great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it. I did my best. Well, if it works for you, I would love to have you back on the show, and we'll be in touch. I will keep the listeners up to date when we can manage to schedule that, and I hope we can talk about all these upcoming projects. Then that would be really really awesome. Thank you so much for your time. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you, Wim. I love talking with you. I really appreciate it. And virtual hug and much aloha to you and yours.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap things up. For all the links to the things we mentioned, I will have that in the show notes at wimsblog.com/78, number 78. Mark, once again, thank you ever so much for taking the time and answering all these questions. I had a blast. This was really awesome, and I look forward to the next time already.
Thank, thank you, Wim. And thank you, all of you, Wim listeners and viewers.